Well, it's 6 p.m. Call the meeting to order. Begin with the land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge that we gather on the ancestral homelands of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically Nooksack and Lummi tribes, who have lived in the Salish Sea Basin throughout the San Juan Islands and the North Cascades watershed from time immemorial. On behalf of everyone here, we want to express our deepest respect and gratitude for our Indigenous neighbors, the Nooksack and Lummi tribes, for their enduring care and protection of our shared lands and waterways. Next up is pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The order? Yeah, we have anything tonight? Do you have anything tonight for the good of the order?
I do. Real quick, kindergarten registration season. So get the word out, talk to all your friends, families, neighbors. We need all the kindergartners that we can get. March 1st is Latino Family Literacy Night. That's going to be at the high school, begin at 6 o'clock. So everybody's invited to share that time with at that night. The Foothills Food Bank is offering the spring pantry program during spring break. So just get that back out there. And in regard to the budget, we're beginning to talk with our principals about staffing, and we'll have a little bit more to report out after next week, but using that final number that we talked about, 1448 district-wide, to move forward with that staffing allocation. All I had. And it's spring athletics start on Monday. So we're 2/3 of the way through.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Next, the consent agenda. Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent agenda? Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And we're very fortunate this evening to have a presentation from the FFA. And so thank you so much for coming, and you're up next. So
You're up next.
who's been chosen to lead? Come on up. Thank you.
Welcome.
Just wait over there if you want.
Okay, so I'm Kaylin Jewell. I'm a junior here at Baker, and I'm the reporter for our chapter. So what that is, it's like I'm the one that is in contact with local media organizations, and I run the social media accounts for our chapter to promote what's going on currently in the chapter and do stuff like this and inform like local people about what it is.
My name is Gracelyn Zender. I'm a junior as well, and I'm also our secretary of our Mount Baker FFA chapter. My position entails of keeping record and receipts of our meetings and our chapter officer meetings, and keeping our records of everything that we do as a chapter and reporting it back to our members.
So just kind of like what we're going to go over in the presentation is livestock showing, CDs, what they are, and the success that we have in them. Community service opportunities, involvement, and the barn projects that are currently happening.
So our chapter participates in both the Puget Sound Junior Livestock Show and the Northwest Washington Fair, which is the Linden Junior Livestock Show and Sale. We have students who show animals such as cows, hogs, lambs, goats, and chickens each year at both fairs. And students average about a profit of $1,000 for a pig, and that can also be more for a cow. It depends, ranges on the animal, market prices, and the amount of add-ons they get as well. But students make pretty good profit off of their animals that they sell at these two fairs.
Okay, so next is our CDEs, and on the left, we have the list of all of our CDEs. So what a CDE is a career development event that's built to expand what we learn in the classroom in all of our like agriculture education classes and put it into practice in real world situations. And we have found we have really good success with it. So forestry has won 14 state titles and placed top 10 in the nation 8 times. AgMech has won 4 state titles in 6 years, top 7 in the nation 3 times. Floral design has won 3 state titles and has placed 3rd in the nation. Food science has won 2 state titles and is placing in the top 15. And egg communications has won 2 state titles and is placing in the top
And that's pretty incredible for a little school
10.
way out in the
Yeah.
corner of the country,
Yeah.
you know, when you think of it.
So also in our chapter, we have lots of opportunities for community service. Some pictured here are log show cleanup where we had students, we applied for a grant and received grants to purchase flowers and gardening supplies to help beautify the log show grounds. And we are continuing to do this. We've done this for the past 2 years and are continuing to do it again this year. Others are our fall social, where we not only get to have an activity for our members to come and collaborate together, but also to paint pumpkins for the Spring Creek Retirement Home, which we have gotten lots of feedback from the retirement home that all the elderly people are very happy and joyful when they get to see our pumpkins that we made for them. And then another picture that we have here is the flood cleanup back in 2021, when it was serious amount of floods. We were asked to help clean up Williams Blueberry Farm, and a lot of our members participated and came out to help. Other community service projects we have during the year include like our FFA food drive, where this year we raised over 1,000 pounds of food to donate to the Foothills Food Bank. And currently right now during FFA week, we are hosting a fundraiser called Kiss the Pig, whichever teacher raises the most money has to kiss a pig. And our profits, our fundraising profits are going to the International Agricultural Educational Program, where they are centered in Ghana, and they are teaching other countries about agricultural education, and our money is going to go towards helping students with travel and food expenses.
So our chapter currently has 108 members enrolled, 8th through 12th grade, which is the highest in 8 years. And the picture is from one of our meetings that we have the first Wednesday of every month. So that's just a small group of the members, but kind of gives you an idea of how many members we currently have.
So we have many barn projects. We have 49 pigs in the barn, all but 6 were born there since November. Over 35 students will use the barn this year, and $30,000 of FFA Foundation grant to update equipment. We received a $30,000 FFA Foundation grant to update our equipment for our larger livestock scale, fitting and showing supplies, outdoor calf hutches and panels for outdoor sheep, goat pens, and ultrasound machine. This is really going to help broaden our resources that we have for not only just pigs, but we are also having chickens this year in our barn and opening up a better opportunities to widen our range of species that our students can have help with raising as well.
So do you do pregnancy detection with the ultrasound?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
That's quite, you're learning some good skills then.
So some upcoming events that we have is currently it's FFA week. So we've been having things going, like activities going on at lunch, dress up days, fundraisers, everything of that nature this whole week. Our booster club is hosting their annual dinner and auction March 9th at 4:30. So if any of you want to come to that, you can go to those two for tickets. And then we have vet science, AgMech, food science, and forestry sub-districts and districts. And then state convention will be May 8th through 12th, and members that qualify will be going to Washington State University. So they'll be staying at the dorms, kind of getting a feel for what that campus is like, as well as competing at the state level. And you can also check our website, which is Mount Baker FFA, our social media, Mount Baker FFA, and or talk to any member for any upcoming events or activities.
Are there any questions for us?
So questions, well, I'll start with you, Jason.
I've been fortunate with my son. This is his first year in it and he's racing a pig and he's been enjoying it and we've been quite a bit of barn time and stuff. So it's great. And we have our auction dinner tickets and looking forward to it. And I was big in FFA in Burlington when I was down there through high school and it's cool to see that's a big number of kids. So that's good.
I was just curious, like, what kind of things do people use their profits that they make from their livestock auctions for?
Yeah, so for me personally, I reinvest a lot like buying a pig can range quite a bit based on feed prices, inflation, and then like based off of how much the people who have the sows that like sell their pigs for. So it can range a lot. So I set aside a big chunk for that. And then the rest of it I set aside for some college and then some for spending.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me personally, I've been showing since I was 9 years old in both 4-H and FFA. So I have created a savings account for my future projects and I let my sponsors that I go and ask for it and I let them know that their help is supporting me with my future projects and also helping me with benefiting my own future. Cause I said, like Kaylin said, I set aside savings for my college fund and also future projects so I can continue on this profit and saving.
And each year, do you always do the same type of animal or do you try to mix it up a little bit?
I've just done pigs personally, but if you can show, there's some restrictions on being able to show multiple animals for like FFA and 4-H at one show. But if I wanted to do a pig at Puget and then a lamb at Linden, I can do that.
I have only sold pigs through the auction and through 4-H and FFA. I've sold pigs, but before I started showing pigs, I actually showed pygmy goats, but you can't sell those at an auction. So it was really fun to get the experience between those two. And I've also had experience in helping with showing cattle, and it's really fun experience to help out with.
Okay. And I just have one more question. What is the difference between 4-H and FFA?
So 4-H is more it's community-based. It's for littler kids because obviously in FFA there's certain chapters that you can start in 7th grade, and obviously our chapter you can only start in 8th grade. For me personally, the biggest difference is that our FFA is student-led. Obviously we have our advisors that help a tremendous amount, but it is more structured and student-led, and I have learned so many more career building traits and leadership skills through FFA. And in 4-H, we have our leaders that do a lot of doing all of the activities and planning and everything. So the difference is kind of like the responsibility intake, and it kind of goes with like how old you are in both of those. And I think it comes with the ages that you go with.
Awesome.
Cool.
Okay.
I tried pygmy goats once. It didn't
Too small.
predators. I was just curious, do most of the people in FFA join in 8th grade and stick with it, or are you having members who are joining after they get to high school?
Well, I personally joined in 8th grade, but we have quite a few. We have kids that like their friends do it, and then they decide later in high school that they want to join. But I'd say we see the majority 8th, 9th graders kind of are our first year members, but we do have members that are in upperclassmen that do join later on.
Cool. So once they join, they get like an overview of all the different things
Yeah.
they're doing, and
At the beginning of the year, we have an ice cream social for all of our new incoming members or people who are just wanting to get like an overview of what our chapter does and what FFA is. So we have that in like the beginning of the year in September, we'll have like an information meeting over in the auditorium for new members or people that are just interested, where we'll go over our CDEs, activities that you can participate in, how those CDEs will help you in different ways to get involved in what ag classes or CTE classes you need to take to be enrolled in FFA. And then we'll also have our first FFA meeting of the year that same night with our members. And if they decide to join that night, they can come over and have ice cream with us and get our first informational meeting.
Well, I'm excited to see the program growing and doing well, so that's awesome. Keep up the good work.
Absolutely. In fact, when we met with the high school principal a couple of weeks ago, he mentioned 20% of students in our district are in FFA. That's so impressive. That level of involvement, but then also what you're achieving. I'm hoping we can get a copy of your slides because I want to brag about the accomplishments to people in Olympia when I'm advocating for our district, because that is so impressive what you guys have been able to do. So, and you're building your own business models and you're running a small business and figuring out how do you want to calculate reinvestment versus saving. It's very impressive in the leadership skills. I hope you all are keeping a very detailed resume.
No, yes, yeah, my resume is long.
Excellent, excellent. But just kudos to both of you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you.
And you can email the school board on the district email it, just school board. So should be able to find it there. I'm very impressed. Having 108 members, that's incredible, particularly as our enrollments decline. And I think it says a lot of how important that is to each student. So I had a question about how do you go about recruiting students to join FFA?
I feel like it's a lot of word of mouth, and peers talking to each other. But we also post on social media upcoming, like because of the upcoming events, we try to push those out as much as possible. We get it in morning announcements. There's a lot of, and then like posters and stuff. I made a lot of posters this year. So just trying to get it known to everybody that you don't have to be like born on a 4th generation farm and know everything before to come in. Cause I came into it knowing almost nothing about anything that has to do with FFA. And I've kind of found my rhythm in it. So yeah.
And that's kind of the point of my question is how do you reach kids who hadn't grown up thinking that they were going to be in FFA? Just, what sort of ways that you kind of reach what you might say?
Todd has a comment.
What's that?
They're doing a great job, but I haven't had either one of these girls in class. They've had the other 2 advisors and Miss Wickham. But a big thing is targeting a kid. I don't see a kid till sophomore, junior year, sometimes just a senior. It's like, hey, you should do this. An example, Kelsey Anderson last year, never thought of doing FFA. Wasn't real confident in mechanics. Well, she ends up being on the state winning team. Okay. And 12th in the state. And so it's like, hey, I think you'd be really good at this because you're detail oriented, or just, flirting with their ego a little bit,
Right.
and telling them that, it's like that's how I recruit my teams. And I think all 3 of us do that. I think all 3 of us do that pretty intentionally. And so it works. And all the recruitment strategies they talked about help as well.
But I think, one of the importance of FFA is it's one of the best things we do to help develop work ethic, which will serve you your whole life. And so it's, that's one of its greatest values, I think, whether you go into ag or not, having that strong work ethic will serve you any field you go in.
And the dependability is there too, because I know for me personally, if one of the advisors tell me to do something, I'm gonna get right on it because they have my utmost respect and everything like that.
Well, a wonderful presentation. And I encourage the board members, each year we get an invitation to the FFA awards banquet, which I try to go to when I can. And I really would encourage you to go because you can get a better feeling of the whole breadth of the program that way. So, and that's late May usually. Thank you very much.
President, I have one question.
Yeah.
Where's the dinner auction?
At the log show, in the museum building.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
very much, guys.
So next up is public comments. Tammy, do we have anyone signed up? Over to you, Jen, next one.
I'm sure you're really surprised by that. Good afternoon. First, I want to say congratulations that the 2 levies passed. I think that's huge. I think it's instrumental in you guys being able to work on the budget. I think that that's great. But I do want to point out that we had 1,600 people go out of their way to tell us that they don't have respect for the way we're budgeting right now. And I think we should remember that. And we haven't put anything out there. And still on our website, you can go and fill out the survey to ask questions about our finances. So we still aren't putting out a message that says we've got this under control. We've seen where we've overspent and we have something in place. We're missing that. I would encourage you to go back and watch the meetings where you came and you listened to your public and you stood up and you said that you were going to put this committee together and you were going to present data that would then become publicly available. And I've yet to see where I'm able to go and get that publicly available. That's it.
Thank you. That's all signed up. Anyone else wish to address the board? If not, next up is information from board members. Start with you, Danielle.
So just sort of a quick rundown of the last couple of weeks. Brent and I met and we're still reviewing backlog policy, but we're getting closer to that finish line. And that's been a really enlightening process for me. It actually inspired me to write a letter to our state government officials on behalf of a couple of different legislative bills. I wrote as a private individual, not as a board member. And then I got inspired and went to the Early Learning and K through 12 Education Committee meeting, which beautifully is now online, and sat and listened to testimony from folks in the public for different bills. And I'm starting to get excited about tracking and following some of that work. And there are a couple of bills that could potentially help us out that are on the docket. And I encourage any of you, it's so easy to go to those meetings and they're kind of C-SPAN style boring, but to have them on and tracking things are important too. It's really cool to see government in action, and you're doing it right now, watching us as government in action. It's really cool to see our state government in action. And so that's what I've been up to the last couple of weeks.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah, I just wanted to share my appreciation for everyone that voted for the levy. And kind of acknowledge that I think for a lot of people that voted yes, it is not a vote of confidence in the way that things have been run financially in the school district. But there's probably a lot of people that just didn't want to see the kids get hurt for, bad financial decisions. So I think two things can be true. You know, it can be true that schools are underfunded. And we can continue to advocate for better funding. And it's also true that we can and will make better financial decisions than have been made in the past. I think if we keep both those things in mind, we'll be much better off.
And, Brenna?
I just would want to say, I got to judge an extemporaneous speaking thing, and that was really fun. So if these guys ask you to judge any of their events, I highly recommend it. Maybe I'll get to do it again. And other than that, I don't really have a lot to talk about. So.
I don't really have a lot either. One thing I should have said with the FFA, it's amazing, and thank you for the teachers and a lot of the moms and dads that put a lot of time in with the kids do a lot too, but there's a lot behind the scenes, and the three advisors and a lot of the other parents step up very huge, and that's good to see and very nice. So that's all I got.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a few legislative items. I went to attended legislative town hall for the 42nd district last Saturday. Didn't quite get the detailed answers on school funding there, but I from all I'm hearing, the state supplemental budget is shaping up with K-12 getting somewhere around 200,000. I mean, 200 million, I should say, statewide, which works out to roughly $200 per student, which would be about 300,000 for us. And going into the session, I think, you know, WASDA, WASA, and other education supporters were focused on expecting about 700 million on K-12. So it's really quite a disappointment to have it such a low priority that, and I spent a bit of time today emailing with back and forth with our 42nd district legislators, and then also was able to get a bit of an email exchange with Lisa Wellman, who's chair of the Senate Education Committee, trying to get that word that within those committees to advocate for the education side as you get that budget crunch, because we're not the only district providing conditions, and a number of others that are teetering on the edge, and having a little bit of leeway there is critical at this time. So the showdown will come pretty soon. MSOX, the House passed a bill that was, I figured, somewhere between 10 and 20% of what it should be. In terms of just keeping up with the increased costs of utilities and insurance and those big ticket items on the materials and supplies. MSOX of materials, supplies, operating costs. And still pending, the House also passed, I think, the increasing the special ed cap, which would be 17.25%, currently at 15%. That would be beneficial to us, but we'll see if that how that holds through as all of these things come together. So that's kind of where we are. So yeah, putting the pressure on it helps to have more people run, so that legislators know that they're hearing it from more than just one or just a few people.
Director, can I add on to what you're saying? So there's been revenues, projections of 1.1 billion
Yeah.
coming into the state. K-12 is, like I said, around 200, 250. And one thing that we can say when we talk to our legislators is that it's their paramount duty. It's in our state constitution to fund education. And right now, it's not being funded. And the evidence is the number of districts that are in financial distress.
Yeah, and I actually included that in my message currently, which usually I don't. Usually if it's implied, but if the decision is between K-12 and Child Protective Services, yeah,
Right.
you know, it's two parts of the same pie. But I have a little bit of a problem delaying $600,000 from Mount Baker to buy a decrepit forest and use state funds to buy that instead of funding what we need on a day-to-day basis. So if buying a decrepit forest is not Child Protective Services. So anyway, I shouldn't get into pontificating on that, but I feel it more strongly, I think, now than most years because of the types of decisions that are made that aren't really aligned with what the state's responsibility is. Ed and I met with Brian and Nick to go over our financial fact-finding information, and we put together a list of the areas that the committee looked at, the major areas, and Brian will be posting that to the website. We can, could we put that up on the screen? I don't know if you
Which
probably
one?
don't have that.
It's called,
Anyway, it's the areas that we looked at, special education continues to be underfunded by the state. We looked at enrollment data and staffing levels related to that.
Brian, do you have that in Brian's stuff?
No, I don't think we have it up.
Yeah, we'll get it on the website and you'll be able to finally check it there.
Where will you put it on the website? Is it
Well, it'd
financial
be on
tab?
the financial fact finding.
Or can we add it to today's agenda instead?
What's that?
Can we add it to today's agenda? Because there's all the documents you can see on our agenda, or is it just on the?
should probably go on the
Financial.
website.
Yeah, I think that the format will be just to put it under the finance tab on the website, because that's how we're generating that one, so.
Okay.
So then next up is action items. Let me get to my right page. And thank you to Brenna and Danielle for reviewing several policies.
What?
Thank you.
Policy talk. Come
You can get on Zoom. Talk about adulting.
So, and we have, the first policy that we have is Mount Baker Policy 5010, non-discrimination and affirmative action.
So I think our only question on this was who's the new coordinator?
Right, we have Mary listed as our Title IX coordinator,
That would be the superintendent, so the superintendent would be.
just by default, that
Yes.
is to you, but in this previous version, we did break it down. Superintendent, and then we had Ian as 504 coordinator.
Yes.
Do we
Right.
continue to
Yes.
just leave that like that?
Yes.
Okay, so pending those updates, I think Brenna and I recommended first and final on this. And there's a lot of chunks of text that you'll see that are added. And what we noticed is they're basically just adding some examples to help better explain and provide more clarity and transparency around what the difference is between discriminatory harassment. And then, like some of this language here under equal employment opportunity and where it applies, right? Hiring, retention, transfer, promotion, training, that's pretty boilerplate kind of language that, you know, you'd see on the EEOC website. So this isn't really anything that's deviating from standard practice, as I understand it. I'm not an expert, but poked around a little bit. So that's our recommendation.
With the board designee, so we're saying there was already a board designee for compliance officer?
Yes.
Well, I think along with the approval, we should, might as well at the same time designate the superintendent as the compliance officer.
Yeah.
Unless someone else should be.
No, it should be the superintendent.
Mhm.
So what's the workload for you associated with this? With being a compliance officer?
It's just part of the job.
And it's required by law,
Okay.
I believe.
I'm just curious, like how much time are you gonna be? Does this take?
Not a lot of time unless something comes through that is placed on our plate for affirmative action.
Okay.
So, no, if there are no other questions, entertain a motion for first and final reading and approval.
Motion to approve policy 5010 first and final reading.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And next up is 50/50 contracts.
Just a minute here. I think our recommendation, I followed up with some questions on this one with Nick, because there are some changes that are relevant to our bargaining units that need to be fleshed out. And the recommendation was that we table this for now so that our
Yeah, I
administration
thought
has
we
more
were
time.
taking this off. We just
Yeah.
didn't get it taken off.
Yeah, I think-
That's what I was intending
I
to
don't think it
table it.
was, yeah, we said a different one. I didn't say 50/50, but.
Yeah, but I think we table this until we can get some more review on it.
If there's no objections from the board, I will table 50/50 and we'll bring it up at another meeting.
Sounds good? Yeah.
Okay. Next is policy 6020, systems of funds and accounts.
So I think we were just like, we wanted to double check, especially with Brian, to make sure that any of these changes were things that we were already doing, and he affirmed that yes, everything in here that's recommended changes the stuff we already do. And so it would just put our policy in line with what we actually do.
That's a good answer.
Yeah. Yeah, good.
That, I had couple comments there on that. Let's see now if I can find the right part of it. So the capital projects fund, so it's on page 1 of 6, and it has a listing of the sources of revenue. And so I think we should add,
Forest, timber,
what's
the
that?
timber.
Yeah, so state forest revenue, the capital projects levy portion, state forest revenue generated by capital projects levy. Capital projects levy or bonds.
Russ, what page are you on? Sorry.
Page 1, so it's the last, the bottom part of page 1, and it's got all these bullet points of the proceed, of what the fund contains, where the money comes from. And then, did you find that part, Tammy?
So procurement of public works.
So just, we'd add an additional bullet that would say, So it would not use the word contains, but the bullet would start, because that's already in there. It would be a bullet, state forest revenue generated by capital projects or bonds, capital projects, levies or bonds. Then, let's see here, capital.
I have it for you, Tammy.
It's service bonds. And then I'm trying to find the. Okay, and I think the rest of the wording seemed like it worked for me, but that was. Anybody else?
Good.
If not, with that change, I would recommend, I call for, would entertain a motion for first and final reading with that and approval with that change.
Motion to approve policy 6020, first and final.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes. And then policy 6513, workplace violence prevention.
I think one of the things was that this should be tabled until we had the permanent superintendent, because it was for some reason, like the committee that had to be created for that, but then I guess if you're already gonna do the one.
It's, so you
You
just
might
keep
as
it as
well.
superintendent, that whoever's sitting in this chair.
Hey, that's a brilliant idea. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, then I guess that's first and final. for that.
The one change I wanted to add on, so in the second paragraph, Tammy, there's a list of using district resources such as work time, district telephones, fax machines, mail, or email. I wanted to add, add computer to the list. I think, they're more likely to use a computer than a fax machine. So just within that list of different.
District phones, fax machine, mail or email.
Yeah, so just fit a computer in there somewhere.
So looked pretty good to me. Through the state law down into the part where it says the creation of a workplace violence prevention group. Workplace violence prevention group will assess the district's vulnerability to workplace violence, recommend preventative actions, employee training programs, and review the policy annual for possible adjustments. So there's a workload associated with that and responsibility. And I just don't know that we want to continue to add workload, especially at a time when we're losing staff or potentially, and it's not related to learning. So I think we can have a policy that's compliant with the law without creating extra work for superintendent, because whoever's coming in there, I'd like him to be focused on improving student learning, not having to do work that's not related to that.
And I think that was one question we had, is if that group wasn't created, are we out of compliance if we don't have one? That's the question. that
Yeah,
I don't
sometimes
know.
those groups are required by law.
But yeah,
So one thought is, and I believe we have a safety committee, district safety committee. Yes. And within that safety committee that is made up of counselors, nurses, admin, and just thinking, right? That's where that work can be done. So I think we have to have a safety committee because of L&I issues. Does that make sense?
It does, it's just, you know, it's gonna be adding workload to people that are already loaded,
Right.
right? So, I mean, I'm just reading the law right here, it says, you know, employee was a survivor of domestic violence, may submit documentation to the district allowing the district to exempt their name and or personal information from public disclosures. I think we can comply with that without necessarily having an additional committee or workload for our counselors.
I think the recommendation to fold it into the district safety committee makes sense, because then we're not creating a separate committee, but it's, the way the district safety committee works is you take all the range of risks and hazards and then prioritize the efforts of the safety committee to focus, you know, more or less of its time, like one of our other policies is walking, transportation to school. And the safety committee may focus more of its time on something like that because it's such a risk to our students' safety. So I think if all, and actually all risks are the purview of that committee already, because that's what the purpose of it is. And then looking at that totality of risks and then focusing. So where do we focus our efforts based on what data shows, what state and ESD recommend on safety, and all, taking, and then what are we experiencing? So all of those things put together then direct I was involved in the last time we kind of revived the district safety committee. So we kind of, that was the focus that we took then.
It may be worth it to get some feedback from that committee before we implement this, because, we're adding workload there, and they may say, yeah, this isn't a problem, no big deal, or yeah, this is just another thing that, we need to do, and it's not necessarily required, right?
Are you currently chair, Nick?
It's been kind of ad hoc, so I'm
Okay,
chair.
because Ben was chairing it. And then, so I haven't, but it is something that,
It's kind of like when we complain about unfunded mandates, right?
mhm.
Someone else makes a decision and then we get stuck with it. I don't want to do the same thing to other people.
Victor, let's table it. And I'll take it back to our ad hoc safety committee. And we'll have some conversations around that and see where we are. So part of that safety committee, they look at all the accidents that happen throughout the district, assess them, talk about it.
Yeah.
What can we do better? Why did it happen? How can we make change? So if that's part of our agenda, let's just take a look at it and
Right.
work with them, and then we'll bring it back to you.
Great, thanks.
And so we'll accept this for first reading, which doesn't take a vote.
Danielle had something to say.
Yeah, sorry. I appreciate the having the safety committee review it. And I would just say that this piece that we all agree on, the state law piece, is important. As a public employee, I have been notified regularly that my personal information is going to be disclosed to X commercial or person, third party. And if I were a survivor of domestic violence, That could be a real
Mhm.
safety concern for me and or my children. And since we all agree that that part needs to get implemented, the quicker we can get this back on the table for first or second reading and the final
Mhm.
approval. I just wanna
We'll bring it back at our next meeting.
Yeah,
thank
and I will point out that even if we don't revise this policy at this meeting, that wording is still in effect right now, because as a district, we
law.
follow all state law, whether it's in the
Right.
policy or not.
Thank you for that.
So,
Yeah.
we're required to. We try to. So we'll accept that for first reading and then get back later. So next is the one I was referring to, Mount Baker Policy 6605, student safety walking to school and riding buses.
On the surface, this policy seems like an easy yes. I had a couple of questions because it had referred to biking in the title as an addition, and then biking, the only other place where biking was mentioned was being struck. And so I reached out with some questions, and Nick was happy to help, and he gave me a bit of context that's really helpful for us. He said that Mount Baker files yearly with OSPI Transportation and has a zero walk district. So basically, we tell the state that we have zero safe walking or biking routes to our school due to lack of sidewalks. So if we have a policy in place asking our district to identify safe walking routes, and yet
We don't have any.
we don't have any, you know, it's maybe not a necessary policy.
Well, you know,
I-
I will say though, on that, we have put quite a bit of effort into getting a safe walking route. The district has lobbied with the legislature to getting a safe walking route from Kendall to Kendall School. And so I do think it's appropriate to keep that in there, because that would be quite a good win. And the legislature has put in significant planning money. And so that is in the works, and eventually I expect that to be built. There's some complications, there's some property acquisitions. So it's not a real easy thing to do, but it would serve a lot of people.
Yeah, I'll clarify that we do have students that walk to school. We just are able to become deemed a no walk zone school is a matter of compensation for bus riders, quite frankly. Because, you know, in more urban schools, if you live within a certain radius, you are not gonna be paid to transport those students because they live in a walkable radius. So it's financially beneficial to us to, and it's not like we're honest about it. We talked to the sheriff's office about it. They approved that we apply as a zero walk school because students, while some do it who live right nearby, it's not reasonable for most of our kids. So that way we can receive as full compensation for transportation per pupil as possible.
My question was, I'm pretty sure this isn't the case. We're not going to be creating individual walking plans for students. This would be more of a generic, here's the safe places that you can.
Well, yeah, Nick just addressed that though. He said, our plan is no plan, because we said we've made the statement that there aren't any safe, currently aren't any safe routes.
So we're not going to provide any information with regards to.
We're not gonna tell students to walk on the road. You know, families may allow their children to walk on the road, but we're not going to.
We offer transportation to them.
Yeah,
And
So
that's the
if
safe way to get to
if they live 6 houses down from Acme School, they could get on a bus.
Right.
Yeah, we know a few students on Eastern Road who walk the back way. It's a pretty quiet road.
Yeah.
But if they wanted, we would send a bus down, but we just
There's a
don't.
road next to Kendall that.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Does that answer concerns, questions?
Yeah.
I think, you know, for let's see here, first paragraph. Let's see. I was thinking we should add on section A, which is bus safety. It's a new, the blue A. Add a annual bus and bus stop training requirement for elementary students. What would you say we do now for that annual?
Yes, there's emergency drills, there's
Yes.
training for kindergarten
Yes.
students and new students on how to be on the bus and bus safety.
Yeah, and I think it's both riding on the bus, but particularly waiting or exiting the bus. Because I shudder to see kids waiting on the fog light. And most of the time, they're way back, but so I think having that as part of the policy, it's in line with what we want to do anyway. So, did you see that, Tammy? On bus safety,
Do you want to add, and you don't think it's covered under the procedures?
yeah, they could be under procedures.
So you just want to add annual bus safety?
Yeah, bus safety training.
Then we can address that in the procedures that talk
Right.
about bus stop drills.
Right.
And then the other thing Danielle noticed was, the bus driver is being struck and is now should follow the emergency procedures. So we thought that was kind of weird, so.
And
Now,
instead of
Will
have a copy of emergency
They ought
procedures
to.
on each bus, they ought to, and we thought that was sort of an interesting downgrade.
Yeah,
So, we weren't sure why that revision was suggested.
Where we live.
yeah, so. Yeah, just what was this just. Yeah, which seems
Yeah.
strange, so I mean, I guess. So what do you think?
Yeah, they should have.
Yeah, they should.
They should
Well,
or they
should.
will.
will.
They should or they will.
They will, yes,
Yeah.
they will.
And then they will have a copy of emergency procedures in the bus.
And they
instead
do.
of-
Yeah.
Well, now it's just, now they only ought to. They
Right.
ought to, but we don't know that they.
We don't have to change it.
Okay.
Well,
The same vocabulary that we
And
have.
so we wondered
Let's
if the
just-
board felt
yeah,
we
if
should
that's
just keep
okay.
the same vocabulary and not go to should and ought.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, so we go back to the well and well.
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah.
Okay.
We oughta.
You see that one, Tammy, under B, emergencies?
Yeah. Okay.
And ensure is correct.
Yes,
They did change that one. yes.
Yeah. With the E.
yeah, it's a bit more, yeah,
It's not an insurance deal.
no.
And that was it.
Okay. With those changes that we noted, any other changes?
Nope.
So incorporating those changes, entertain a motion for first and final reading and adoption of policy 6605.
Motion to approve policy 6605 first and final reading.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And then the last one is policy 2121 substance abuse program.
I had asked a couple of questions and Bridget was gonna respond. I think she's ready. Are you ready?
Sure, ask.
I just wanted to know what the program what program is used and what is the effectiveness of the program historically?
You want to come up, Bridget, if that's. Sounds like it.
She ought to, or she?
She should have.
You will.
It's also nice for the folks on Zoom.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome, executive director, teaching and reading.
Yeah. So we're fortunate to partner with the ESD for a substance abuse prevention interventionist. I may have some of those. SAP, Shayna Axelson, is our person, and she provides services and direct instruction in 7th and 9th grade around substance use and abuse. Pretty direct lessons. The project success is the base curriculum. She definitely enhances it because it is, it needs some enhancement.
Right.
So that happens there, and that's around not just identifying substances, but healthy relationships, understanding impacts, understanding what stressors are and how, choices that you make for that. We don't, the healthy youth surveying information is just being put together, so that's a really good question of what is that impact?
Yeah.
And she could definitely speak better to that than I can.
Yeah, because I think it just says that there's follow-up involved on here, with the new stuff that's coming in. And, I can't remember where it was, so,
Yeah, this strengthens it. We go from may to will.
yeah.
So my question was, the part that they added was, the board is committed to the development of a program which emphasizes, so is this in addition to what we're already doing? Is it just a confirmation of what we're already doing, or I'm not sure what the program is that they're talking about. Says to ensure the safety, health, and well-being of students, the board is committed to, and the part they're adding is the development of a program which emphasizes.
I wonder if we could use implementation
Seems like we're
as
already
opposed to
doing it.
development, because both are already doing it, and development is even if we weren't, development is part of implementation. So that implementation would cover what we want done.
Yeah, I could agree with that. If it's already, we're already using it.
Yeah. The other new part has to do with district will make information from the Department of Health that address substance use overdose symptoms.
Healthy use survey.
Healthy youth survey, and then if you look also on the website, particularly at the secondary counseling tab, you will see a lot of resources that are available.
So you're
That
saying we
information-
already do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're not gonna be asking the district to do something that they already, that we're not asking them to do something new, they're already doing these things.
Okay.
So it's not extra workload.
And also just on a side note, I just read an article in one of the WASDA things that they send us, and a few of the tribes around here are gonna start doing something that they've been working on in Iceland. I don't know if you read any
I
of
didn't
that.
see that.
And it sounded really cool, and I think Lummi tribe is gonna try to use it, and it's pretty successful in Iceland for
They're
prevention,
gonna go
so,
visit.
yeah, so, I think that's something to keep our eye on too.
Well, we've got a bill on the docket to strengthen or make sure that districts are consistent in addressing opioids in that training that happens. So it's good that we have a robust program in place and that we can just keep doing that good work.
Right, and I think it's dynamic, unfortunately. I
Mhm.
think, staff, teachers on the front line are well aware and access resources.
Mhm.
At that session that I went to, I heard a mother speak on behalf of that bill and talk about how her son went and bought street marijuana, thinking it was just, because he's underage, so he couldn't buy it legally, thinking he was just getting marijuana. It was laced with fentanyl and he died. Right, and I don't know that our students are aware that that's part of the dynamic that's changing, right? And so that bill is really core in making sure that parents and students know that the world of drugs that we're dealing with today is very different than it was even 10 years ago.
Well, and the parents need to know if they grew up in a different era.
Right.
Yeah.
It's life and death,
Mhm.
truly.
Yeah. So you got the changes, Tammy?
No, so.
Okay, so I think,
Go over the
so
plan.
the one on the first paragraph, the blue sentence there.
Yep.
But the board is committed to the implementation or committed to implementation of a program which emphasizes, so changing the word development to implementation.
Yeah, thank you.
And I don't think we had any other changes here, did we?
No.
No, that was it, just that one
So
word.
just that one word.
Instead of develop.
So with that one word change, entertain a motion to approve policy 2121 for first final reading and adoption.
Motion to approve policy 2121 first and final reading.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So that concludes our,
Just
Paul?
some clarification real quick. Tabled 50-50.
yeah,
We'll bring that back to you. First reading for 6513.
mhm,
And we'll look at those changes on there.
Yeah.
Around domestic violence.
yes, so both of those can come back when. And this is actually something we discussed, so we in our planning meeting for this, you know, I think the direction that we would be better to head on policy is to ensure that the review happens at the administrative level first. Because I you know, for some time, we'll get policies and then say, well, has this been reviewed? Has that been reviewed? Then we get first reading and then we wait until those get reviewed. So ideally, we would have the appropriate review. If it's a nursing, if a policy that has to do with nursing, then the nurse will review it. If it has to do with finance, then the finance director will review it. Whoever's appropriate. If it's a union issue, then the unions need to review it. And then if we get everybody's agreement back, then it's much easier for us to say, okay, everybody's reviewed it. They like the language and then we're okay rather than just kind of trying to do it backwards. So that's what I'd like to do as we're moving ahead.
We're working on that. Executive Director Perigo is developing the system, just as you talked.
Good, very good. Very good. Okay, next is Director of Finance report. Welcome, Brian.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Let me unmute myself here so that you can hear me. And
I can hear you over there.
mute myself again. All right, well, yeah, thanks for having me. We'll start with just some general business. One of the items that came up, excuse me, at the community forums was K3 compliance and how we were going to meet our K3 compliance. We were able to make some hires early in the year when we saw that we weren't hitting that. And in January is the first time they crunched those numbers. You can see our demonstrated class size at 16.47, looking for very close to the budgeted size of 17. That's not an actual class size because that includes all of the other certificated staff that interact with those kindergartners through third graders throughout the day. So they're specialists, they're music teachers, they're PE teachers. But the demonstrated class size with the teachers that interact with our K3 students puts us very close to the mark of 17.
What's the 445 FTE?
That's total students in the district,
Okay,
kindergarten through third grade.
okay.
And then the total teachers, 27.027. That's broken down not only by the classroom teacher, but by the time that those 445.17 children interact with other certificated staff. Yep. And only state funded staff. But we make sure that we fund those teachers with state funding so that they count for this, and we get that funding. So that's a report that comes through on the January apportionment every year. They check it in January, March, and then again in June. Last opportunity to make any changes is in June. We do not need to make any changes. We are in compliance with K3 class size.
And just to reiterate for anybody who's listening, that compliance gets us what?
So we are funded to 17 children per class, right? So if we were to have 19 kids per class or a demonstrated class size of 19, it means we're leaving some money on the table. And we'd have to look at if we hire to lower that number, is that person fully funded or are we funding that as well? So this just means we're collecting all the revenue available for class size in K3.
So if we reduce the number of teachers in K3, we risk losing funding because we're above that student teacher ratio.
Correct. We don't collect the funds if it's above 17.
Okay.
So it's okay to be close to 17 and above it because there is a calculation of, maybe if we're at 17.2, then we were to hire a teacher to get us down to 16.8. Well, the state would fund maybe a third of that person and we'd fund the rest. So we have to decide what's best.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you for clarifying. Appreciate the questions. The other calculator that is new this year is physical, social, and emotional support staff. And this is the new one based on, if you remember, the enhancement to the prototypical school funding model, where they chose school nurses, counselors, psychologists, those physical, social, and emotional support staff, and they increased the allocation for those staff units in our schools. It was a time when the legislature said, hey, we're going to increase your FTE for this and you can hire more people, right? And we all just laughed and said, no, now you're close to funding about a third of what we already have and already do. So this reflects that we already do. You will see in elementary, there is a difference that is negative. That's because some of our elementary school counselors are ESSER funded. So you could add a federal funding full 1 FTE there. So it's not that we're not getting the support to our elementary students that they're funded for that they need. It's that we're funding it from a different source. And the total overall in compliance you see is just about 1 FTE over, and the state totals it. So they don't mind that we're below in elementary as long as we're in compliance overall, and we are.
Those ESSER funds are basically blown away at this point, right?
Correct. We're spending down the last round of it this year.
So Brian, the number the state's looking at is the total line at the bottom?
Correct.
Okay. And that's where we're a bit over compliance then.
Correct.
So if you were to add the one ESSER funded, it would get added to the state funded prototypical. That would bring that up to 7.8. That, am I understanding that right?
Yes. Sorry, it would bring our total FTE, yes, to 7.8, the green line, 7.8. So 8.8.
Oh,
The green
that
line
gets
is our
added to
staffing,
that.
yes, sorry.
We're
Green
still
line is our
only-
staffing, blue is the state funding.
We're still only gonna get 6.8
That's right. Correct.
from the state.
That's correct.
Oh, the ESSER funded, it's not in there at all.
No, no, because this is all about state funding. Yes. Okay. This is something I wanted to highlight that Russ talked about a little bit, and this is information that we did send to our legislators when they were asking for it. They were talking about the materials, supplies, and operating costs. If you look at just utilities and insurance, you can see per year what those costs were, the total expenditures for utilities, insurance, and the unfunded amount. So even in 1920, we had a pretty significant 19% unfunded amount of a fixed cost that we can't not have, utilities and insurance. That's now up to 43 for the 22-23 school year. It is going up. And my estimation of the MSOC bill that was mentioned by Russ is that they would give us about $36,000 extra dollars. So you can take that number 474,
Yeah.
623 and bring it down to 470 three, 590.
Yeah,
Things
that's
like
why I
that. No,
was
sorry, that's-
mentioning, you know, where
it's a
I
little-
felt it was somewhere in the order of between 10 and 20% of what we actually need to
Correct.
to meet the total expenditure line there for this year.
The increase may account for inflation, but it
Right.
may not.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and this, yeah, that it may not is probably a more correct statement.
But I did want to highlight that this document, along with the PSES calculation and K3 calculation, are already added to the website. So they're public documents, they're out there. They came in apportionment. This one didn't, but it's out there. So I wanted to highlight it for you guys so you can see it's one piece of the puzzle that we're putting together statewide.
And thanks for putting this together, because this was important information for our legislators to know to what extent they're underfunding MSHOs.
Yes, yep, no problem. Happy to do it. And when the bill passed the House and went to the Senate, I immediately sent this and a text to Senator Shoemake, and she is on board. She is a proponent of this. She's advocating for it. It's not in their budget, but they're still in negotiations around it.
So the Senate can increase the amount that was, I guess, put
Then-
forward by the House.
And then it would go back to the House to pass
Okay.
again.
Okay.
Yep.
And when I wrote my letter to her, she responded in an hour and said she had already been talking with you and that you had given her very useful data, just,
Yep, hopefully it
FYI.
helps, right? Because that
Yeah.
advocacy matters.
Mhm.
And again, I would tell everybody listening that a list of all of your representatives in the legislature is on our website. You can find it there with their contact information. We did that because we want you to talk to them as well. They hear from me, but they know they're hearing from me. They'll hear from the public as well, and that only helps our case. So we want to make it easy for you. All that information is right there. All right, so we don't have any specific tasks for the board in budget prep for this month. But I did want to highlight for you, that last time I was party to that discussion, we came to a number that we could start with for our estimates for enrollment. We're using that number. We've mocked it up grade level wise, school wise, been on trend. It's been reviewed by the ESD, that they don't do official reviews of that. I've been working with them closely in the budgeting process. So we're now moving to working with administrators on, what that number may mean for their staffing plans, and just in the beginning process of that development. But we are moving forward with a process that does involve a larger group. I also wanted to put that number in some context, so I took our enrollment data back to 2006. So instead of just getting around COVID and wondering what that trend was and how that impacted, you can see from 2006 to present on the left. And with our added projection for 24-25 and 25-26, it looks pretty much on trend. So I wanted to put that historical context out there for those of you listening or who were at this table and wondering about that number. That's the context. Okay. Questions before I move on? Okay. We had a good meeting with the county treasurer today. If you recall, we reached out to them early on and asked, hey, can you help us? And their answer was, we'd love to, but we need the levies in place. And we need to see that our investment in us supporting you is going to be made whole eventually, because they also have their own budget and their own concerns, though they're different than ours. They have a responsibility to taxpayers to mind that money well. So the day after the initial levy results came in, I emailed the county treasurer again, and we met today. Superintendent Brockman was in that meeting as well, along with the deputy treasurer, and it was much more positive. They were happy to see our levies pass. They were congratulatory. We talked about the estimate that we're doing in budgeting and making a sustainable path forward, because that's another thing they need to see, that they're not going to be asked to bail us out again and again. I put forward a plan that included a loan from capital projects, a smaller ask from the county treasurer than we initially made. And in the start of the next school year, when we get our apportionment for the 24-25 school year, we'll be eligible for another apportionment advance And when we receive that advance, we could actually pay back the county treasurer. So if they give us a tax anticipation note, it's really a short term. We're looking at maybe May or June, May at the earliest, I believe, and November at the latest. That we'd be loaning, or that we'd be taking a loan from the county treasurer.
So the format of our loan is just that, a tax anticipation.
Yes.
So it's paid back by tax collected before they take that out before they forward the rest to us.
Correct. And we do not have an agreement yet. I want to highlight that. But they did tell us that they were in contact with a legal counsel. Her name is Cynthia Weed. She's been helping, I think I mentioned her before, she's been helping our school districts in this situation since the mid-80s.
Yeah.
She worked for K&L Gates, and she's doing all of her work pro bono, and it's a lot of work right now for us and for everybody else around the state. But they have been in direct contact with Cynthia. They have some sample language. So they hope to have something to us in March. And it will include interest payments that we do pay to the county. So it's a loan from the county, we will pay interest. Which is why it's important for us to get that portion in advance to recollect that and not be paying interest to the county anymore.
And what rate of interest?
That will be in the agreement that they set forth. But it will be based on their interest collections. So it's not necessarily them making money off of us, but of the money they're going to let us have, what interest are they losing out on by not having that invested? So my understanding is that that rate is set by the performance of their investment.
And what would be the duration of that loan?
Potentially, it depends on when we first have need of it, which I estimate to be May or possibly June, depending on how the cash flow looks. We'll be monitoring it carefully during that time, and we'll probably want to have an agreed upon, signed, resolution from them, so that in the time that we go negative, we could just apply it and not do it earlier than we need to.
Prior to taking that loan, are we taking a loan from ourselves against capital projects?
Yes, we are.
That's
First step. Yep.
So that will minimize the amount that the county, so any interest we have to pay for capital projects, we keep ourselves. So-
Correct, in the
so
capital project fund.
The county portion will be as minimal as we can make it.
Correct. And with that apportionment advance, if you recall, when we did that, we don't get to keep the interest we earn on the money that we're holding early from the state. We have to pay that back, but we're also not paying
Very
interest.
clever.
Yes. So, it was a positive conversation. I believe we'll be able to work with them moving forward. We have some other plans in the works, just in case that doesn't work out, but I do believe that they will be supporting us through our time of cash flow need.
Brian, let me add, as part of the conversation, it was mentioned by them that they've been talking to other treasurers throughout the state. They know the landscape of where districts are in terms of tipping over in financial distress, and they can become allies of us in terms of lobbying our legislators for, especially for next year in the long
Yeah,
session.
that's kind of the point I'm trying to make to the legislators is try to keep districts out of binding conditions.
Yeah, the message from Steve Oliver, the county treasurer, was, we will help you, but we don't want to, and we don't want to help anybody else. It's not really their role, right? So they emphasize the importance of schools in the community, and they want to have successful communities. That said, it's not the county treasurer's role to bail out districts that have, with two things being true, that we're underfunded by the state and that we haven't really adjusted to that underfunding. Not really the role they want to play. So that was this morning. Questions again before I move on? Okay.
Do you anticipate, do you think we will have a resolution ready for the March 14th meeting?
I don't know.
Not by then.
Likely not. for March
Second
14th.
meeting in March, maybe?
Possibly.
And that one's not a major rush. I think before that, you'll see a resolution for the loan from capital projects
Oh.
to the general fund. And before that, you'll see a resolution for a transfer from the capital projects to general fund. And that's one that we typically do at the end of the year. All of the purchases that are in the general fund are reviewed. Anything that's capital eligible is then part of the transfer. There's nothing to say that we can only do that at the end of the year. So before we pursue a loan, we'll pursue a transfer of all eligible funds. Then we will pursue a loan from capital projects. Then we will pursue tax anticipation notes. And then in October, when we get our apportionment advance, we'll pay back the notes. And when the loan from capital projects hits that 1 year mark, where it's no longer, right, we can't have it anymore because it's only good for a year, we will either re-up it or we will be sustainable. So there's our path forward. Oh, and that's the next slide. So there it is.
Mhm.
The one thing that may change in here is that currently the law, the RCWs are written where there's an update for COVID, where we can take the capital projects fund loan to the general fund for 2 years. So that's been updated, but the school accounting manual has not been updated. So we go by the accounting manual, not by the law.
And that's what auditors go.
Correct. So, but if we need it for more than a year, we just close it and re-up on the same day.
Mhm.
Okay. Any more questions before we move on to the next
Questions?
portion?
Just a comment,
Yes.
acknowledging all of the details and shuffling and work to minimize the impact of this really difficult situation as much as possible. I appreciate all the work that goes into that. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here at Mount Baker doing the work. I look forward to the time when I don't have to.
This work could be here.
Yes, happy to be here, keeping the district solvent and sustainable.
Yes.
Yes.
So just do the regular parts of your job and this problem solving piece.
Yes, but thank you. I appreciate the acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll now switch over into our January update. So you'll see the cash balances there. Those are not the fund balances. The fund balances are reported to the board in the budget status report sheets, but the more pertinent information here is the cash balances. The budget status reports also will be uploaded to the website for public viewing in case anybody is looking at our fund balance and tracking it as they go. Capital projects did pay for the boiler in full from Acme, and there'll be a reimbursement of, I believe, around $262,000. So there'll be more money coming back to that fund. OSPI is pretty quick about getting those reimbursements in, but they got us the check, I believe, early in February. Did that come in February? I think so. Yeah, so we've got it, but it's not here because we've not done February books yet.
Thought we had more money in the capital projects fund.
Yeah, so it will be, that'll be up by $260,000.
Okay.
Yep.
And that is the fund amount that we'll be borrowing from.
Correct. We'll have another levy collection before we borrow.
Okay.
So, yep, that'll be another substantial chunk of money that goes in there. And that money was transferred out of that into debt service in anticipation of paying the second portion of our loan.
Okay.
All right. So there's the enrollment report. Again, budget for 1536, less 31, we're at 1505. And that is typical of the trend that you see. So ideally the orange line would be closer to the blue line, but the drop over time is typical. Revenue collected as part of a total. So there we are, partway through the year, partway up that graph. You will see that there is some, if we're halfway through the year, we're not halfway up to our revenue yet. There are some programs and grants that are typically collected at the end of the year because it takes time just to get all of the reporting for those things ready. And also the state fiscal year ends on June 30th. So they keep 20% of our apportionment for July and August to make their fiscal year look better. So I believe we're on track with revenue collection. But that's why we're not at halfway while we are halfway through the year getting close. Luckily, expenditures look about the same way.
Mhm.
So do expenditures ramp up at the end of the year or?
Some do, yeah. And you'll see in a slide coming next that this month we had some extra expenses, like we paid a quarterly bill to our Running Star partners. It was pretty significant. So this month we had higher expenditures than previous months compared to revenue. And also revenue was lower because January is a lower apportionment month. But yeah, there tends to be an uptick towards May, June. And that's kind of when some of those outstanding bills for the end of the year come due.
So are we still expecting about a $2 million deficit at the end of the year? Revenue versus expenses?
Yes, hopefully less than that, based on some actions we've taken, but when the budget is set, the budget is largely, in place and moving forward at that pace. Yep.
Yeah, that would be interesting as we go a little closer, as you can, to the extent that you can anticipate what our actual fund balance will land on.
Mhm.
What the differential, and what cost savings we've been able to make, that would be interesting, so we don't get right to the last minute and either make or not make it.
Yes.
So, because we if there's any other actions we can take, and we're close, we want to know that in advance.
Yes, yep, and we will be tracking that. I mean, I'm tracking it now, but we'll get much more specific as we have more data, right? So as we get more data throughout each month, I'm putting it into our tracking sheets. And a lot of that as well, if you recall, happens at the year-end process that's due at the end of October, when I get to go back and look at everything and make sure that everything is where we want it to be factual, but also in place to the best support of our budget and therefore our students. So there's the yearly revenue comparison, and again, I want to note that that includes the apportionment advance. So why it shows that we have much more collected this year is because of that jump, over $1 million of an advance apportionment. There's the yearly expenditure comparison, so still spending less month over month, and you can see that January was a pretty high month. A pretty good jump last year as well. And then again, it's partly due to those kind of quarterly bills that come through.
I guess I don't really understand why our expenses go up so much when our main expenses, people, and that should be fairly constant.
So that's cumulative. That's
okay.
Adding on. Yep, as percent of the total.
Could you present it in different ways so it doesn't keep
Right.
going up?
If you look at the line, the incremental increase is about the same.
Yeah.
But there's what you're asking for.
Yes, there we go.
Yep. So green is revenue, and you can see that special revenue in October coming through. And aside from that, as the budget was written, spending more per month than we're taking in. We're having more expenditures than revenue. And the difference is significant this month. And as I mentioned, there were some quarterly type expenses in teaching and learning that came through. You'll see a similar thing happen. I think our next insurance payment is due in June. So that'll be another one that's significant.
And you saw our insurance costs with the
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah.
So it'll be an extra $250,000, sometime in May or June, that'll again skew this number and say, well, but it's an expected expenditure, so it's in there. Okay.
Questions? Well, thank you. There's an excellent report, and you presented some of the budget or finance information in different way for us, which I think it's nice to be able to look at some some of the other aspects and understand better. So I very good presentation.
Thank you. And I'll get you a fund balance estimate for next time.
That'd be great.
Yep. And again, it'll be an estimate, lots of assumptions in that when you project
Sure.
into the future, but I will prepare that for this report as well.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah,
Thanks,
of course.
Brian.
Thank you.
Next up, superintendent's report.
Okay, real quick, been out visiting schools. Dan's favorite part of the job is getting out and checking it out with talking to principals and teachers and kids and having a great conversation with both certified and classified staff. I did do some flipping of burgers and cooking up hot dogs for the FFA. Where'd you go?
Just left.
Brenna, Director Rao there, came in the office right after I did that, and I mentioned I was out flipping burgers. She said, I got a whiff of that. So legislative action, we've talked a lot about this already. MSOC special ed looks like it's coming forward, maybe transportation, but not a lot of money, and it may be a wash with escalation costs anyway, inflation. So thanks for keeping up to staying on top of that. I am looking forward to following this next year, especially after our conversation today with our county treasurer, because they seem frustrated. The treasurers are frustrated. And that's the feeling I got from them from talking to their counterparts around the state. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on our legislators next year to take some action. Audit, we have a financial audit coming up, financial accountability. They'll be on site. Brian and I met with them on Zoom a couple of days ago, maybe yesterday. And this is a yearly thing. They come in and audit different parts of our financial system. So they'll be on site. We'll give you more information as they come out. Budget, some good news. He is one of the best I've worked at. And he hasn't been doing this very long. But I can tell you, he is one of the quickest, fastest studies around school finance. Where'd he go?
He left you.
Yeah. And I just want to tell you the detail that he has around this, it's special. It's really good. So he deserves the kudos.
Yeah.
Sorry, I needed a sticky note about the general fund.
Sorry, we're talking about you, but it's we're done now. Some good news. Transportation safety net, $97,075.56. That came back to us. We're expecting maybe 200,000 or 300,000 or more in safety net coming back. And that's an effort with the team here, mostly there working doing some of that work. So Kendall Elementary Fire Suppression Grant. So Tom secured a deal through OSPI, $500,000. So we'll be working on that and working with OSPI on next steps for.
So will that cover the
No.
fire suppression costs?
No, about half.
Half of it?
Yep. So we're able to do it in phases. So this will be one part of that phase.
Yeah.
Get going on.
So we can spend their portion and not match it right away.
Yes,
Okay,
I
good.
think so.
Yeah. That'll help if we're borrowing everything out of that fund.
There you go. And more good news, the high school has been awarded a career launch grant totaling about 162, that's actually more than that, $160,000, but includes a specialist for up to 18 months, equipment upgrades, high school manufacturing program, internships, those types of things. We met today with Todd and Toby and Mr. Reitmeyer, and this is good.
Yeah, and those are paid internships for the students, I understand.
Yeah, so we'll get more information on that. One of the decisions we have to make is when do we start? Because we have to hire somebody this spring, as soon as this spring or in the next few weeks. But we'll have, it's only 18 months. So when does that clock tick and when would be the best time to implement the program? So I have, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
I did have one last one. So I put in your seats there, capital facilities plan. We are these are 10-year plan. The 2013 is up, and so we will be updating this plan again. Executive Director Nick will be leading this project, and he'll be working with Blackman County.
putting this together.
So the updating is basically just taking the format here and putting in the new figure.
That's exactly right. We'll
Some new
be-
pictures, yep.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, some better, I mean, our school boundaries haven't changed, so that picture will stay the same.
You're right.
But, yeah, some figure updating, Tom and Brian were both in the meeting, and Tom and I were chatting afterwards. We're really curious what the county demographer has for projected family growth in this area, specifically in the Kendall area with the developments out there. So, yeah, I'm really excited to see how this shakes out, because I want to see what their data looks like.
Mhm. And I don't know if they get down to the level of projecting demographics by age. But
That report, which is what they helped author before, showed mainly household count and household size. But yeah, I mean, they take some data from the census as well, which we know has.
right. I think that's the thing that kind of it affects our student numbers more is more households with fewer children. But yeah. Great. Yeah, and this is time, we're supposed to update every 2 months, so.
Yep.
We'll be spot on track there. That's good. Any other questions on that?
No.
Okay, next up is our board discussion is our school improvement plan visit. We did the secondary school and actually we were at the ERC also. But let me see here. We could start with where do you want to start there? The observations on the we could start with the junior high. Or high school.
Junior high.
Junior high, okay. So what do we see?
You go first.
Hmm?
You go first.
Me go first.
Yeah, I know you like to go last,
There you
but you go first.
Okay, so I gotta find my right page there.
I
So
mean,
I
I'll
go
go
first.
first.
You're gonna have to go first, because I don't see my junior high page here.
Okay, I'll
I
go first.
must do one.
Go ahead.
All right, I wanted to just call out a couple of really cool things that stood out to me. I mean, first was the attendance rate for junior high, and I know that they calculated a little differently than maybe some of our, elementary schools or whatnot, but still they were coming in at 91 to 93% on their daily student counts. I know that we're comparing apples to oranges there with some of our data. And it was actually something we talked about maybe trying to align that data so that we can watch it across schools, but still, that's a high attendance rate. We got to see Fun Friday in action, which was a really cool engagement opportunity. And one of the things that we heard about was that engagement in junior high is one of the things that they struggle with. And so this Fun Friday gives the students the opportunity to sort of pick a place where they want to go and do some more targeted learning so that they have a little bit more agency in that. And it was really fun to see students who were picking, playing with the physics and engineering of building paper airplanes and then tracking how the changes and developments to those airplanes changed the path of flight. That was really cool. It looked like a lot of play, but there was a lot of really smart stuff happening behind that. We also got to see a lot of students choosing pickleball, which was my personal favorite. A lot of students were in the gym playing for Fun Friday and getting that, physical activity in. And so I just wanted to call that out, that was something really neat that they're doing to help boost that engagement in junior high. So a couple of things I noticed there.
Yeah, I was trying to find my pages on the academic goals and I don't have them here, so.
It's okay.
Did
I
you
did
write them
not,
down?
no, I did not. I did not take very good notes. You guys, I'm trying, racking my brain.
My
trying
notes
to
are good
remember.
for high school, but
I've got more.
Everything you say, that's what I remember and Troy does a really good job. He has a lot of information and, so it was great. And then Fun Friday was fun. It's seeing all those kids and, I liked that there was different kinds of things. There's quieter things and then there was boisterous things and, it's just because there's a little bit of something for everyone. So, because not everybody wants to go and get wild.
Pickleball was the favorite though. Gym was packed on that one.
Yeah.
And like Danielle said, the attendance for all of the junior highs was really something. That's a good number, 80s and 90%. That was really good to hear.
Yeah, especially in junior high, like those kids, I remember junior high, it was hard to get up in the morning and then you have to sit on the bus forever and so good for them.
I call out one more thing too that I thought was really, really good. They're not just tracking what's working, right? Troy pointed out that yes, they've got this high attendance rate, but they were breaking it down into different demographic groups, and they noticed that our Nooksack and Lummi students had a much lower attendance rate of around 53%. And so they're tying some of the professional development that they're doing with their teachers to bring in an expert who has worked with tribal nations all over the country to help, build more cultural understanding and connection between our teachers and our local tribes to try to help begin the work of thinking about later how we maybe push that attendance issue or nudge it in a better direction. And so I'll be excited to see and interested to see how we can continue that work to build those connections as a district, and not being afraid to look at our data and see the places where, hey, there's something going on here and let's dig in there and see if we can make improvement. I think that's a great mentality.
yeah, I think that there was the willingness to not do the one size fits all approach, but look at various groups and say, okay, this program isn't working, what will? And I think that's the pathway to actually being able to succeed is getting down to really understanding the kids and what will work with them and engaging the parents, because it's engaging the parents is very different in that and trying to work out ways that the staff can connect with parents.
And in building with that, one of the conversations that we had that Troy brought up was the idea of honoring Treaty Day as something that the district could also be looking at. And then I believe that's come up in conversation in developing our calendar for next year. So I'm happy to see that awareness and that thoughtfulness starting to move in that direction.
Yeah, that was supposed to be on our agenda tonight. We were going to do like a preliminary check on approving the general status of the calendar. And basically what you need is just a sense of the board, I think. And
Do you guys have that memo?
what's that?
Do you guys have the memo that I sent?
Yeah.
Yeah, did everybody get a chance to see that? I'm sorry, I didn't notice that we didn't have it on the agenda, so I think we probably should incorporate that in a discussion, because you do timely, we do need to give Nick a sense of, go ahead with the next stages of calendar development, and so if you don't mind us backtracking a little bit, taking a little bit of time to do that, I think Ed brought up an important concern is, and from the parents, and this is something to throw into the mix in the discussion is how do we handle early release? And I personally don't have an answer, but I think that having that concern expressed helpfully will help focus the discussion so that however we handle it will at least have that concern in mind. Because I think the concern is the difficulty for parents to get childcare for just one afternoon a
Well,
week. But you go ahead.
Yeah, that wasn't real. So I guess my concern with both treaty day and the early release is similar. So with treaty day, it seems like we're adding a holiday to the middle of January, which is kind of prime learning season, and adding a day to the end of the school year when the days are nicer and longer and we're more likely to have students be absent, including some of the students that you just mentioned, meaning that the students who have high absenteeism are more likely to miss that day. So my concern is that the total learning that's happening throughout the school year would go down in that scenario. And similarly, with the early release, one of the things that I learned in our school visits, when I ask teachers and principals, what's the number one factor that impacts student learning, what they've told me is classroom time. And that's the reason why I guess the state test scores go down over the summers because the students aren't in class. It's been mentioned that one of the benefits to having students in class during lunch is they're in the classroom, they're being read to, they're learning. So, removing that, that 90 minutes of learning from the students to add to training for staff would have to be shown that more than offsets the reduction in learning from the students. And that's not clear to me. What is clear to me is that there's less learning happening and there's a negative impact there. So if there was some data to show that the extra time for training resulted in improvement for student learning, that would be great, but I haven't seen it. So I'm hoping that we can go back to giving the time back to students for learning.
Maybe it might help, Nick, if you could give a little context on the role of the collaboration and professional development time, irrespective of when it happens, but how it fits in both the work, the annual work of the teachers and staff, and the contract, the funding, those kind of things. I think that might be useful. Yeah.
I think the question may be more appropriate for Bridget, teaching and learning.
Okay, yeah, sure. If you want to come back up, Bridget, because I think.
I think it's a team effort as
It is
well.
it is a team
Yes,
effort.
let's go.
Why don't you both come up? Yeah, because you both have also implemented that as a principle in the building too. So
Right.
You know how the rubber hits the road.
Right, well, when you think about the current structure, what we have in place now are the early release Wednesdays, and that's a balance of teacher-directed time, professional development, which is principal and leadership team directed time, and then PLCs. And when this
concept came forward. The need was to have more time to support teachers with not just their classroom work, but also with the initiatives, the school improvement plan at the school level. Because many times you'll have those days at the beginning of the year, in the middle of the year, and at the end, and it's really hard to keep that momentum and that connection for learning going. And so having this consistent time where teachers have time that they're taking care of what they need to be taking care of, their staff-directed time. And then the professional development that's connected to the school improvement plan. Think about what you saw when we did the graphic that Todd Matthews provided at his visit was pretty explicit as to the connection to the school improvement plan. And to keep in mind too, that that is for classified as well as certificated staff. And then the PLC time is PLC groups working on a common goal that is going to improve.
That's a
their
professional
practice.
learning community, so it's the, in that case, it's the teachers that are working in subgroups.
Mhm.
I was very impressed with Todd's ability to take the data and say, here's a place we want to tweak and do better. And then tied that to the calendar of their professional development and show how those professional development topics and strategies and things that they're working on are directly tied to that school improvement plan that's based on the data, and that they kept cycling back in and feeding on themselves, right? So that we look at the data to see how we're doing. We say a goal for how we want to make adjustments. Our calendar for professional development is tied to learning how to meet those goals. And then we check the data again to see how good we're getting there. I mean, that loop is that we are doing what you're asking for, improving and showing. In terms of the student data, I mean, I'm looking at that 9th grade success work we haven't gotten to talk about yet,
Yeah,
that Matt was showing us, right? 86% of students are on track with their studies, up from 70%. The 9th grade success work gave a 3 times boost to graduation rates, right? I mean, that's part of what they're doing during those professional development times, is working on that student success work and how do I implement it in my class? The credit retrieval work that they were doing to implement to get teachers to help reduce those F rates, right? The F rate went down 47% from the first trimester because of that work with credit retrieval. Those conversations happen during professional development. Teachers learn how to do credit retrieval during professional development, and it brings down the F rate in a measurable way. It boosts graduation rates in a measurable way. I see the connection, but that might be because my background in education helps me fill in the dots in a really clear way for me to see. So I think, Ed, I totally agree with you. We want to invest our time in something that's going to make a measurable payout and make sure that it offsets the costs of classroom learning time. But I think high impact practices and making sure that teachers are doing the most current research-based teaching possible is a great investment in moving student success forward. I think those two things are really closely linked, because you can have teachers who maybe it's been 15, 20 years since they were in school, and they need that opportunity and that time to keep doing that learning and growth, so that when they come into the classroom, they're doing the best things possible to help teach those students.
Yeah, along that same line too, we've worked hard to align the work in one classroom with the work in another classroom, so that both within the grade level, but even more so from grade to grade, so that a student in 3rd grade, when they move on to 4th grade, the teacher can reasonably expect that they had done 3rd grade work. I mean, that's so by the professional learning communities working to all stay on the same page, they're more likely to be able to work with each other, concentrate on the most important things and get those kids to the next grade on time and with that level of capability. So, you know, from a contractual standpoint, what are the elements there?
Yeah, definitely. So this was developed collaboratively with MBEA, our certificated union, for initial implementation in fall of 2021. And the reason I bring that up is because I agree with Director Fox that we need to make sure we're measuring if this is actually making an impact. The reason I bring up fall of 2021 is because personally, I would like to get some better data from, you know, there's pretty impactful events at that time. But back to how it was developed was working during the bargaining process. There was a subgroup of people on the bargaining team, myself and Troy from the district side, and a couple of teacher leaders from the certificated side. And we brought this proposal together to the whole bargaining table, and we thought it was agreeable because the motivation there, the way we bargain is what's called interest-based bargaining. It's where we share interests, and we agree that there was a strong interest in the district to ensure that our staff had adequate access to professional learning as well as professional development. And there was an interest from our staff to grow professionally. And there was a financial piece of it too, that we didn't have a lot of time outside of the school day to leverage an increase of, you know, we could increase every teacher's workday by 1 hour, and then we could stay for an hour at the end of every day. But that's got a cost to it. And so this was quite frankly a model that we had seen and our neighbors doing. You know, Cedar Woolley does something similar. Meridian does something similar. Bellingham does something similar. I'm sure the other county schools do as well. And one of the reasons we saw that some of the schools moved to that, you know, what motivated the collaborative part of that was the support of families, because the year prior to the implementation of this, there were early releases throughout the school year, but they were not predictable. And so what the belief was that having predictable release time made it easier for families to plan, which I know wasn't the point you brought up, because I think the point you do make is an important one, that, you know, while I don't know the exact correlation between seat time and student improvement, there's ought to be a pretty close connection there, I would imagine. So that's how the process came to be. And I was actually really appreciative of the work with MBEA out of the bargaining process and the development of this, because it was a big shift for the district.
But we do provide childcare options. At least I know at Harmony, the students can sign up for the YMCA after-school program on early release days. There's an option to just stay at school, and childcare is there on Wednesdays. Does that cost family?
And it is
Yes.
fee-based, yeah.
It is
and there is a
fee-based.
limit, but it is, yeah.
Yes.
But if they did leave the campus, it'd be fee-based too.
Yes. Yes.
I guess I prefer, just because the connection isn't as clear to me as it is to you, to move that time back to the students and then create a goal that we get financially strong enough that we can provide professional development training to our staff outside of prime learning hours for students.
And I'm gonna pause real quick here, because I'm gonna give the disclaimer that I know not people don't want to hear. Because it isn't part of our contract, I don't think we should discuss it too much further.
Right. Yeah, that's why I wanted to have this discussion, set the parameters of what we do and don't.
And I definitely appreciate the input for sure.
And I'm not, at least from my standpoint, I don't feel, I think what you need to take away from here is sort of a sense of the board, so that you can continue with your discussions and get more detailed on the actual development of the calendar. So what we need to ask ourselves is are we in concept, in support of continuing embedding professional development into our regular schedule as a methodology, And I think it's the only, personally, I think it's the only one we can afford. And I think the timeliness does make sense, but, so that one, and then, and are there any other models that might work, to be able to do that within the same general parameters of cost and timeliness?
And I think those are great questions that I appreciate hearing that, because as the superintendent and I and our negotiation team goes into bargaining, those are the kind of, we know that that's the sense of the board, like you just messaged. That we'll be able to make sure that's, when we check in with you guys on bargaining updates, we'll let you know where we are, and we know that, where the angle is as far as the guardrails that we need to stay within.
Does that make sense? And then Treaty Day is a separate issue. And I think one important element of Treaty Day is a conversation between the administration and the tribe.
Yes, and those conversations, while not formal, we just had one yesterday morning, because Nooksack Valley, they brought that to their board. And then talking with some of the tribal members yesterday, it was like, they look forward to hearing what Mount Baker is going to do.
Yeah, so I think if that, to me, coming back with that conversation to the board seems to be an important element in weighing that value, because I think one of our long-term, and this has started actually a bit before I've been on the board, is trying to forge a relationship with the Nooksack tribe that is mutually beneficial. I think it's when you look at student success, each group of students takes a different approach to be successful, and I think success of our tribal students is a whole separate type of our work. And so I think having that part, being part of the dialogue between the district and the tribe is important in that success. So at least
Probably obvious, but I'll mention that I would hope one of those options would be honoring Treaty Day by building into class lessons, having school that day.
And that could be part of the discussion, this way, that way, But if you could hold that discussion, then come back to the board and say, well, we held this discussion, we talked about this, we talked about that.
And that's why the dates and the memo I shared with you was as intentionally sparse as possible.
Right.
We just want to make sure we communicate with the families about that first day. That's probably the most important thing. And then the spring and winter breaks. So that's why what I shared with you didn't include a whole lot of extra stuff, because
No, I saw that, and
Yeah.
that's fine, but I think what you wanted from the board now is sort of, is this the right direction?
certainly.
And given those parameters, does that make sense to the rest of you?
It was kind of following the parameters of other schools around, which is a good.
Right, yeah, that's a great point. There's a lot of intermingled families.
All right, thank you.
So do you feel like we've muddled it, or do you feel like you've got?
No, it's nice to hear, because I'd rather this happen now than, we get too far along with our labor groups, or with administration and have to come back. It's kind of like we talk about policy, right? Like if we know what the process is, we can follow a healthy process. So that way we're not having to second guess too far into a process.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and thanks for thanks for putting that together early on in the process so we could weigh in that manner.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we'll go back to let's go back to Mount Baker High School, and Danielle had us with 86% on track at ninth grade, up from 70%. So go ahead, Danielle.
Just a lot of good stuff happening with that ninth grade success work. and credit retrieval, and I mentioned that briefly. I don't need to repeat all of that, but that was something that really stood out to me. A couple of things for us to just maybe put a pin in and keep in our minds. You know, I heard that is data tracking software, STAR was preferred over FastBridge. It seemed like maybe we heard from our junior high and high school that STAR was better tuned to what their needs were. FastBridge might be better for our elementary folks. So that was just something that kind of stuck with me, because, you know, I like the data and I want the data to be meaningful to people. So that's just something to keep in mind. But yeah, those are two really big, that 9th grade success work, a 3 times boost to graduation rates. That's good work to keep doing and to celebrate. And that credit retrieval work, bringing down the number of Fs that students have, 47% drop, and then to continue to see drops each trimester after that. That's excellent work. And that just benefits our students and their future long-term success. So I wanted to call that out as stuff that stood out to me.
I really enjoyed the English class that we went to. They were working on opinion editorials. Wasn't easy. I mean, they had to put a lot of thought into that, which would work well in a setting like that. Also, so I thought that was really good, in addition to all the other things that you mentioned.
That credit retrieval thing is great. I was really impressed with that way they were working that angle. And then we went to the one classroom with Holly and Meg was in there. And, you know, it seems like a challenging group of people, but they were like having a good time and they were asking us questions and really kind of getting out of their shell. So I thought that was really cool. So I think one of the things I wrote, and I was like, I don't know why I wrote this, but it was like that their willingness at the high school to try other things. And I think that was part of it, is that they're trying that new classroom out, and then they're trying with the credit retrieval, just something different rather than going the same way before. That's maybe doesn't work so much anymore for this new generation.
That class had good questions.
They did.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they had.
And out of all things that they worry about was more drinking fountains.
Yeah, the water.
A lot of kids were taking on that. The F rating program they got to make that better is making things better. That was really good to hear. And the wellness program that they do, that seems to be pretty well. And it was good to see the dogs. The first time we walked in the office after seeing them here, and a few hours later, we seen them all running around there. So that was really good.
I also noted the college and the high school now is up to 11 courses with 175 students participating. And those are all students that are generating college credit, and they're staying on campus, and they're getting dual credit for doing one class. And so it's a win-win all the way across the board. After school, Ron mentioned this too, that we have about 50% of the students in one or more co-curricular activity. And there's been a drop off after COVID. And because I remember years ago, we used to that figure was around 80%. And so it's something that will take some building back. Those are, there's always a variety of reasons why students do or don't do things, but it will take some continued building back. I'm pleased with what we have, but I think that we have room for improvement there. The credit retrieval was a great idea. I mean, it's instead of redoing a course, taking an extra 3 weeks to complete it is time effective and helps keep the students on on track in a reasonable manner. So it's, and I think, you know, you mentioned but trying new things, and it's an educated risk. And I think from our level, from the board, appreciating that and giving the license to try those things, knowing that you almost have to have that license to fail. Because that's the only way that you will be able to succeed, is if you can, like I say, an educated risk, you know, you understand enough of those elements to think, okay, this program should work. And then you have the support from our level to try it. And which they did with the credit retreat. And it's, you know, comparing that with an online course, which from all I've seen, it just does not do the same job. And the teacher's identifying specifically what each student needs to be able to demonstrate mastery, rather than just redoing the whole course type thing. It makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. So Phil, I think you'll get a chance through the next few months to focus some on high school, and that'll be interesting, that conversation there. So
Yeah, they're
To
doing
see
some
what-
really great things.
Yeah.
I'd like to see all of this ninth grade F data as that translate up into 10, 11, 12, and translated into higher graduation rates, or looking at that, higher attendance rates as well. But they're doing really good work. They have some great initiatives over there. Just was impressed with what I saw. Even in Holly's classroom, with those kids asking really hard questions. What do you do? So they're learning from their teachers about what questions to ask and to provide deeper level thinking around that. So level of knowledge. So
And the continued focus on ninth grade. Ninth grade is always that time when kids are deciding what to do, what their future is going to be. It's a very, very vulnerable time. And our staff recognizing that and trying to put their finger on the scale towards success is very critical. I mean, having that 86% on track is a very good direction. And so I think the work they're doing shows both their understanding of the challenges and of the kids, and of how you can work with those. It was a very good visit.
I think there's also an interest in discussing a middle school model at some point.
Oh, right, yeah. And that'll probably take some time, some thought, right? We've got a lot on our plate right now.
there's probably a little bit of money attached to that.
Yeah. So, but it's something to always, to. Yeah. And we have extra space in the elementary, so usually what drives those kind of decisions is lack of space. And so it's but so ERC, what were your thoughts, observations of the Educational Resource Center visit the preschool?
Seems like a really fun place. All the people who were working there that I talked to seemed like they really enjoyed it, and they all had connections with kids. And I don't know if it was that they had connections with certain kids or if they have them with all of the kids, but it was, there's one person was watching with one, and then, so they kind of didn't really move away. I don't know if there's space, if they're just monitoring a space or if they're monitoring a kid, but they're just delightful. It seemed like everybody was doing their thing there. And it was a beautiful day, so that really helped too.
Yeah, I think it stopped raining, or nice day, so people were outside, and they've got a nice play area there. Chips and some swings and some other things to do, and a sandbox and all those things. So just, yeah, great for those kids to be outside. And they also have a nice kind of covered area as well. So I just think that's probably really good for little kids.
I enjoyed watching the staff members help the children develop their social skills, how to get along with each other. That was a lot of the effort in play. It was an educational play. And if you violated another child's space, how do you fix that? And I think they were, at their young age, learning how to be future adults in a very thoughtful but gentle way. And we did discuss a little bit of the options for gen ed preschool and that's something that'll be interesting to see if we're able to bring that in. And I think Ian mentioned that we currently have 33 students enrolled in special ed preschool. We had pre-COVID, we had 50. So there could be a potential to have more slots, but as that's something that you guys would generate, and then if there's a way to do it, and then bring it forward to the board. But I really think that as a concept, having kids who are developmentally disabled with those who are not together really helps both. And so as a concept, I really support that. So if we have a way forward, it's and space and capacity and a way of being able to do it financially, it would be of interest, at least to me. Any other thoughts on the?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I'll make a couple of comments. We got to see the students mostly in an outdoor period where they're, running and climbing and working on all those gross motor skills that, preschoolers should be working on in addition to their social emotional stuff. And I really enjoyed getting down in the play box, like the sandbox, and talking with them and interacting with them. But I also noticed one of our teachers was signing. She signed help to a student, and I went over and talked to her because I had learned some basic sign when my kids were preschoolers, and so had a conversation and found out that this was something they were doing with a student who isn't as verbally expressive as they'd like, and so they were using sign, not full ASL, but sign as a bridge to help introduce that concept of literacy and communication for her. And we had a really great conversation about that. And it really helped me see the range of the types of students that we serve in that developmental preschool, and that they all have very unique needs, and the adaptability of those staff and our program and our leadership to meet those needs of whoever comes through the doors. That was really profound realization for me, that we don't know what those students' needs will be when they come through, and we have to pivot and adjust and make ourselves ready. And to see that in action was a really cool thing. And just a thing I wanted to call out is good work that we're doing in our district. Yeah.
I think, one of the things Danielle's mentioned is the more we can build up our preschool program, the more that'll help our enrollment.
Right.
And it goes to
Enrollment and also that differential in experiences between children, between one family and the other. Children come at very different levels of development depending on the experiences that they have prior to kindergarten, and providing some of those experiences to kids that currently aren't getting them is one way to help build that capability at the kindergarten level.
Yeah, and it's no surprise that our second graders struggle with literacy more than any other grade on this level because they were in preschool in 2020.
Yeah,
That tells
Third
you-
graders now, but yeah.
Well, yeah,
third graders now, yeah.
second and third grade, right?
Yes.
Preschoolers, right? And we see that impact from preschool deficit because of COVID playing forward. And so I think that's just drive that point home.
Yeah.
Yeah, preschool matters for years.
Oh, good. Well, thank you very much. I thought that our school, I really liked our school visit methodology this time of doing all elementary in one day and the secondary in the other. It made a lot of sense. Meeting schedule, next meeting, March 14th. Ed, you said you're not able to come?
Yeah.
Is everyone else available? So we don't have to worry about a quorum. And then we don't have any other meetings scheduled before that. We don't have any other visits or anything scheduled. So next meeting is March 14th. Executive session, we have one personnel item, approximately 20 minutes and no action to be taken.
20 minutes?
Hmm?
20 minutes? Timer, please start it.
Well, we have to sign our papers first before the timer starts. You don't get that much.